Toyuto is mean that speaking of, when you talk of, or when saying something. In Japanese, when you use the grammar of toyuto, you can use with the noun only. That means you should begin by the noun and after that followed by toyuto. For the toyuto, you can write in kanji or in hiragana. As you see here, the first one is write in kanji and the second one write in hiragana. It just has the same meaning, just depend to you. No problem anything which one you want to use. And it has the meaning that speaking of, or when you talk of, or when you're saying about something. So to make more understand about how to use the grammar of toyuto, the next we are going to see some example together. In here, the first sentence is said, Sakura toyuto hanamida. Sakura toyuto hanamida. Which means that speaking of cherry blossoms, flower viewing comes to mind. Speaking of cherry blossoms, flower viewing comes to mind. The second example. 人気があるアニメというとワンピースだ。人気があるアニメというとワンピースだ。Which means that speaking of popular anime, One Piece comes to mind. Speaking of popular anime, One Piece comes to mind. Let's see the first sentence. It says Sakura toyuto hanamida. Which means when you talking about the sakura, that in that thing, in your opinion, is has only for the viewing, flower viewing, or go to see the flower. Hanami is mean flower viewing, which means that when you go to Japan, you will see that for in April or in March is for the flowering season, or is for the flower season in Japan. So you will see that they will go to see flower, many flower garden. So they will to see the beauty of flower around in Japan. They have some garden like that. So when you say about sakura, that means sakura is very famous in Japanese. So when you say about sakura, you will think about how to many people come to see flower in the garden in Japan and view the beauty of flower. And for the second sentence, they say, 人気があるアニメというと One Piece だ。That means when you're talking about the popular anime, so you think about One Piece. One Piece is the name of the anime story in Japan, and it's really famous. So in Japan, if you talk about the anime, many people Japanese will think about One Piece. One Piece is very famous Japanese story, so many people are reading the story, and many people know about One Piece in Japan. So when you use the grammar of toyuto, that means when you're talking about something to be example. For example, when you're talking about anime, so you can say anime toyuto, right? If you're talking about some topic and you think about another, the component of that topic. For example, you're talking about anime, and the component that might be the famous story about anime. And the most famous one is One Piece. So many people know the One Piece, and you can take One Piece to be one of example of the anime. So this means how to explain that when you talk about some topic, and you can take some example from the topic. The next, this sentence is日本料理というと寿司が一番有名だ。日本料理というと寿司が一番有名だ。Which means that speaking of Japanese food, sushi is the most popular. Speaking of Japanese food, sushi is the most popular. This sentence means that when we talk about the Japanese food, 日本料理というと when we talking about Japanese food, and we will take the most famous one to be example. In here they say sushiが一番有名だ. This means sushi is the most popular. Then when we talk about the topic of Japanese food, and many people will imagine about sushi, right? Because sushi is very popular Japanese food in Japan. So many people know about that. So when we use というと, that means we take some topic and we take some component of that topic or the most famous one. The next example is 日本の東海というと東京と大阪でしょう。日本の東海というと東京と大阪でしょう。Which means that speaking of Japan's big cities, Tokyo and Osaka come to mind. Speaking of Japan's big cities, Tokyo and Osaka come to mind. This also has the same meaning as I just last explained that when we talk about Japan big city, we will think, or in our brain, in our opinion, we will think about Tokyo, right, or Osaka, right? But in Japan, maybe you may know the famous city like Hiroshima, Osaka, right? Something, or Nagasaki, right? Nagasaki and Hiroshima and Tokyo, Osaka, Hokkaido is the big city in Japan. So that when you say about the city, the famous city in some country in Japan, for example, Japan, we will take the most famous one